Hello? Your Health is Calling, where holistic health meets practical solutions for your well being. With your host, speaker, New York Times bestselling author, Sue Kostyk, a seasoned holistic health practitioner and longevity coach. Join Sue each week to embark on a journey to uncover the root causes of your health concerns. Through a personalized approach, learn how to decode the messages your body is sending and craft natural protocols to address them. Call in live at 888-994-4995 Studio A.
Hello and good morning. Welcome to Hello, Your Health is Calling. I'm Sue Kostyk and I am an integrative health practitioner. Integrative health is a modality that we get to the underlying root cause of what's going on. And we do it through traditional Chinese medicine, through ancient Ayurvedic medicine, as well as nutrition, and really taking our health as a holistic matter. So, body, mind, and spirit, we are looking to see why you have the symptoms you have. And over the course of the last, 15 weeks, we have dove into detoxification, gut health. We've gone through the de-stress protocol, which is diet, exercise, stress management, toxin removal, how we need to rest, how we need to control our emotions, supplementation, and success mindset. And today we are going to dive into a little more on the emotions and mental health and how our mental health affects our overall health. Our brains are connected to our gut and also to our heart. And that's one thing that we haven't really exposed yet is that total connection and how there's a nerve that goes from our brain through our heart area and our gut, and it's called the vagus nerve, and that's what connects all of us together. So when you hear the gut brain connection and how that can get broken and become dysfunctional, and that's when you start having symptoms of all sorts of things. It can be anything from digestive symptoms to heart issues to mental illness because we've shut off that connection because we are staying too long in some emotions. We're staying too long in that fight or flight or that survival mode. And I wanted to talk a little bit about this before I bring on my guest, who I'm really excited about, and you'll see why in a minute. But even back in the 19 or 1820s, when Darwin was figuring out the whole survival of the fittest, and he actually talked about the mind and the gut and the heart and how they're connected in both humans and animals. And he studied animals for the most part. And so back in the 1820s, he was talking about how survival, when we are in that survival mode, when we are stuck in fight or flight too long, that means we're like basically running from an unseen enemy. And what he did was he studied this in animals, and he found that when animals would be stuck in that survival mode for too long, they no longer reproduced. And so that led to extinction. So imagine that and then put it into humans. And when we, under all of our stress and all of our emotional issues and everything, we stay in our emotions for too long, we are shutting down that nurture, that care, that love part of us in order to heal and survive. And I'm reading this book. It's called The Body Keeps the Score. And it's really so very interesting about this whole issue of how our physical is affected by our mental. And when we were in the de-stress protocol and we talked about stress management and we got into the emotions and the 9 toxic emotions that we stay in and how that affects us. And by the way, if anybody wants to watch any of those and rewatch them, they are on the Reinvented Life Network on YouTube, or you can email support at Hello Your Health is Calling, and we'll make sure you get those, because all of these are tying in together. Everything I talk about just kind of is, just one big topic. So getting back to staying in fight or flight, staying in emotional survival mode, and what that does to our bodies and our systems. So if you are running from an enemy, if you are a primitive man, you're running from a bear, you're running from an enemy, you do not have to reproduce. You do not have to digest. The only thing that your body is doing is surviving. So you're constantly in that fight or flight. You're constantly flooding your body with that cortisol. And the cortisol is your fight or flight hormone, so to speak. It's the one that gets you going. It's, like if, you are in traffic and someone slams on their brakes ahead of you, and you have to slam on your brakes, you've got that, all of a sudden your heart is pounding. That's because you've gotten this flood of cortisol. It signals your brain to create that adrenaline to keep you going. So what happens? You stay in this emotional state for too long, and your body needs to keep creating that cortisol. So it's shutting down. It's like, oh, I don't need to digest, so let's shut down some of those things that we need for digestion. You don't need to reproduce, so it's going to start affecting your hormones and your hormone balance, because you're robbing Peter to pay Paul to create that cortisol. So where does mental health come into this? So what happens is when you stay in fight or flight survival mode for too long, it starts to create these post-traumatic stress issues. And it's been studied in so many people that have PTS that the rest of their body doesn't function properly, and they're constantly in this survival mode, in what's called this emotional state that even though that stress is not occurring anymore, in their mind it is. And then there's triggers and everything. And so I'm going to bring on my guest in a little while, and she is someone who has dealt with mental health issues, who has dealt with PTS, and we've walked through this together, and she is on the other side, and she's going to just help me talk a little bit about the process of discovery and what kind of modalities are out there that could be helpful for people. So we're going to go to a quick commercial break, and when we come back, I'm going to bring my daughter, Grace, on. We'll be back.
Hello? Your health is calling. Feeling bloated, low on energy, dealing with hormone imbalances? Integrative health coach Sue Kostyk is here to assist you. Reach out to Sue for practical health solutions guided by her professional training as a holistic coach. Sue specializes in identifying the underlying causes of health issues and restoring balance. Don't let your health concerns impact your well-being. Contact Sue Kostyk today at 917-362-5176 or via email at sue@symmetryhealthandwellness.com, and take the first step towards a healthier, happier you.
Hello, Your Health is Calling, a new show brought to you by the Reinvented Life Network. Tune in Thursdays at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
You've been watching Hello, Your Health is Calling. Join me as we dive into the realms of longevity, nutrition, stress management, and toxin removal, all without the use of harsh pharmaceuticals. And now, back to the show. Okay, welcome back. So we're going to dive into mental health and how it affects your overall health. And I'm going to bring on my guest. Her name is Grace Kostyk, same last name because she's my daughter. She is 18. She just graduated from high school and is getting ready to go off to college. And through her probably middle school through high school, she has been dealing with her own mental health journey, and we've been on this together. So I thought it would be great to bring her on and we can talk about some things. And so let's welcome Grace. She's also becoming a great mental health advocate. And welcome to the show, Grace.
Hello, Mother.
Hello. And so, Grace, before we like really deep dive into this, I'd like you to just share a little bit about your journey, when it started, how it made you feel, and just share.
Okay,
Mm.
so my mental health journey started from when I was in middle school, so seventh grade. Um, that's when I started to really have anxiety for the first time. And I remember there's specific moments that I can recall, but I would just be very hyper aware of things and very hyper aware of self. Growing up, I was really spunky and I didn't care what other people thought of me. And then there's this thing when you get into middle school where now you care and you care about what other people think of you. And it's a whole new thing, a whole new playing field. And I remember if I was in a situation with a friend group, it could be people that I've known since I was little, and I would all of a sudden get anxiety just over random things, over if they said something weird to me, and I was like, oh, do they not like me anymore? Or if I did something that they thought was weird, and it just was all just based off of what people thought of me, really.
Mhm.
So it really did start in middle school, and yeah, through middle school, I first saw anxiety, and then um, into the beginning of high school is when I started depression. I started my freshman year during COVID. So during isolated time, not seeing people and just not in the regular like spaces that I would normally be in, it was very hard on him, sure, for
Yeah.
everyone who went through COVID. Um, so that was just like a layering part of it as well. Um, and then I really, really struggled with depression um, my junior and especially my senior year of high school as well,
Yeah. And so I feel like middle school is really hard for a lot of people, especially girls, for
for
whatever
sure.
reason. And, then like you mentioned, COVID stepped in and that kind of messed everybody up. So,
Mhm.
but as far as, I talk about emotions and then toxic emotions and sitting them. And so when you have anxiety and depression that follows that,
Mhm.
what prohibits you from being able to step out of that? Because people who don't suffer with mental health, it's a different story for them. But for
Mhm.
you, and maybe some of our viewers or listeners can identify with what you're talking about. And some people will say, oh, well, gosh, I just go and exercise, or I just go and talk to a friend. You know, what at first, before you really could identify this, what first prohibited you from being able to step out of that anxiety when it would occur?
I th- I was gonna say I think I know that for sure it was a pride thing. I mean, I felt like I could do it myself. I didn't need to let anybody know about what was happening. And I think also a sense of shame. There's a lot of stigmatism against mental health. Um, Certainly, back then when you were early talking about, the 1800s and stuff like that, when people thought women were crazy, they would put them in a psych ward, but really they were like having post-traumatic stress disorder or,
Yeah.
depression or something like that. Um, and we've definitely come a long way in, you know, having these diagnoses and treatments and stuff like that, but there still is a lot of stigmatism behind
Mhm.
asking for help.
Yeah.
And I know for me, I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't like pinpoint it.
Mhm.
And another thing was if somebody doesn't know anything about mental health or they
Mhm.
haven't experienced it before,
Mhm.
they're not going to know what to do.
Right.
And I think also there's this pressure on the other side, like people react in different ways. And so with me, whenever I would have my panic attacks, based on how the other person reacted, was how I knew I could trust this person. And that's also where my PTSD comes from, is if I knew I could trust this person and go to this person in that time of need. So everybody reacts differently. I remember one
Mhm.
time, actually not very long ago, I was in Colorado and I started having a panic attack. And I didn't know anybody there. And that's already another anxiety that builds up upon it, is when you don't know anybody. And everybody was just staring. And I was like, great, this makes me
Mhm.
feel amazing. Thank you so much. Um, but it's not their fault though, because in a way,
Mhm.
people react in different
Yeah.
ways. Like they were just scared, and you can't blame people for that. And then you have other people who know exactly what they're doing, and they can, calm you down, give you breathing techniques, ask you certain questions because they've dealt with it before or they've seen
Right.
it before. So yeah, that's kind
Yeah.
of how I
Well,
dealt with it.
and just to piggyback on that, because in our family, you experienced that with us because we didn't understand mental health.
Hmm.
And it was a frustrating road for you
Hmm.
because also, when you don't experience any kind of mental health issues in your family, and someone you love very much is experiencing these things, there's fear that comes behind that. And then there's just not knowing what to do.
Hmm.
And so I think that you advocating for yourself, and not everybody can do that. And so now you're
Hmm.
on here, and hopefully people who are listening and watching can see that there are people out there speaking to it. And I know it took me personally a while because, you know, when you think about mental health, like you said, there's always kind of been a stigma. And
Hmm.
yet, as a parent walking through that, you want to do the very best for your child. You want to, you know, make them into wonderful human beings, and, you
Hmm.
know, be tough and be able to,
Hmm.
do things on your own. So, I want to talk a little bit about once we were all on board,
Hmm.
and we actually did some brain scans
Hmm.
because the brain is really under researched, so to speak, as far as actually looking at the live brain. There's a lot of knowledge about what happens to the brain, like they study the brain in Alzheimer's patients and all that. But there's not a lot of study in the live brain. So we found Eamon clinics who do brain scans. And let's
Hmm.
talk a little bit about our findings from that,
Hmm.
and how maybe there was some surprises, maybe there was some like, oh, okay, well, that's what I thought. And these
Hmm.
brain scans, I'll let you talk about them and what they, how the process and everything, and then we can talk about the findings that we found from these brain scans.
Hmm. So, I had been in therapy for about, let's say like 6 months, right? Like up at
Yeah,
that
6 months,
point,
9 months.
I like
Yeah,
started April of last year. And then we didn't find Amen Clinic until like May. Yeah, April, May,
yeah,
I would
something like
say.
that.
Um,
It's almost a year you were in
and
therapy.
yeah. Um, And I would be in therapy and things were just not getting better. Like every time I showed up to therapy, there would be a new thing to talk about. Um, and it was very concerning for me. And I know it was concerning for a lot of people around me. I actually remember at my church, we had gone on a winter retreat. And I remember telling an adult for the first time that I was not okay and that I didn't want to be here anymore. I had given up. I didn't feel like there was anything to live up to. And it was the first time that I feel like I was heard by an adult that like wasn't a physician. I mean, there was I had a couple other people obviously that understood too. Um my dance teacher that I am very close to, she had been through on my side this whole entire experience and I could not be more grateful for her. Um But I remember specifically at that point, I had not told her everything, but I told this church leader a lot. And my best friend, I would be calling her like day in and day out of being like, I just can't do this anymore. And, she's not necessarily an adult, like we're young adults, but that's not the same thing. And I remember just telling her that, and she was like, and I was like, please don't tell anybody because I
Mhm.
don't want to get in trouble and I don't want anybody to be mad at me because there's also that stigmatism behind people who are suicidal.
Mhm.
Um, and where I hear a lot of people who actually, the families of people who do commit or, people that knew them being like, oh, that was so selfish what they did. Unless you have been in that mind state, you don't get to comment on that, unfortunately. Um, because for them, that was the only way they thought that life would be better.
Mhm.
And as somebody who has felt those things, I would hate for somebody to say that I was selfish, you
Mhm.
know? And it's just, it's one of those things that is another thing with stigmatism. Um, but I remember, being heard by an adult for the first time
Mhm.
during that camp. And I remember um, the person that my dance teacher that I was talking about, she went to the physical therapist office that my friend worked at. And she knew that we were very close and that she was like my best friend. And she was like, hey, have you seen Grace lately? And have you checked up on her? And my friend was like, no, why? And she was like, well, I've seen her at dance and she's not like herself. And I'm very worried. So, it was affecting the other people around me as
Yeah.
well. Um,
Yeah.
for
So
sure.
let's,
So,
and that, having someone close, trustworthy to talk to is super important. But
mhm,
these brain scans that we did, I'd like to share a little bit about those. And, you know, again, talking about the brain and the gut connection. There's so many times when you would use the words, "I don't feel well," and you know, when you are in a situation of mental health where your mental health is declining, you don't feel well because your body's not operating well. And there's usually a reason, and it's usually because your brain is not getting the signal to produce the serotonin, the norepinephrine, and those kind of things. So when we did these brain scans on you,
mhm,
and then met with the psychologist or the psychiatrist after that, it was very interesting
mhm,
because the brain scans actually showed that it
mhm,
wasn't just a serotonin issue. It was also a norepinephrine issue. So he prescribed something different
mhm,
than, because if you had not done the brain scans and
mhm,
if he had not seen all the different ways, because the brain scans, they do scans while you're resting and scans while you're at work, so under
Yeah.
stress. And he pointed out on the scans the areas, and he showed us all the different ways your brain was firing. And so the
Hmm.
medication that he prescribed for you was not just a serotonin uptake, it was a norepinephrine and serotonin, because norepinephrine is the precursor to serotonin.
Hmm.
So it was very, and he even said, he said, I would never have been able to prescribe this had I not seen how your brain reacted.
Right.
And so, and then he also prescribed supplements. So let's talk about the combination of things that you're doing, how you feel now. Um, you know, let's go from there.
Yeah. So, definitely before I started the brain scans, just feeling that depression. And I think with the brain scans, what was so helpful was it was a way of having somebody like believe me in a sense
Mhm.
of, okay, I'm not just crazy. So yeah, like how you were saying, how he was pinpointing, um, exactly in my brain what was firing and what these relate to. So we did find the anxiety, the PTSD, and the depression in there in all the different parts of the brain. He also showed us what a completely healthy brain looked like as well, which was a really nice side by side. But as I've been taking my medication that he prescribed to me, it was really funny because I got it right before the day before I took my AP Lit exam. And I
Good
remember
thing.
my mom saying, "Do you think that's a good idea before you have to be in a secluded room for like the whole entire day?" And I was like, "It's fine."
I
Because
know.
with new medication, there's side effects sometimes. And we
Well,
all
and
don't
that
want
was
to be
my
like
worry,
passed out on
but
the floor while
then,
I'm
right.
while I'm
But then
typing
what
like
happened?
my 4-minute essay.
Right.
Um, but then immediately when I took it, I felt completely better. It was
Hmm.
so weird. It was like literally that what's that one song where it's like the sky is clear, whatever, all the obstacles in my way or something
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
right.
Bright
I think
sunshiny
it, yeah,
day.
exactly. I know.
Yeah, that's literally how I felt.
Well,
um
and I noticed almost an immediate reaction too, because I didn't really say anything because I thought, well, maybe it's, a placebo effect and whatever, but literally immediately there was a result. But he also prescribes supplements too. So
right.
there's supplementation that goes hand in hand with this. So,
Yeah.
he prescribed, vitamin D3 because you were very deficient. And this whole process, and so again, we're kind of running out of time. I got to be cognizant of that. But this whole process was very holistic. It wasn't just like sitting in front of a psychiatrist talking and him saying, okay,
Right.
here's what you need. It was doing the brain scans, it was doing blood work and finding out chemistry of what was deficient and what you needed supplementation on, and also the whole
Right.
sleep part of it. So, this conversation could actually be another segment, because going into the supplementation, I mean, the medication was wonderful, but the
Mhm.
supplementation and getting your inside, your gut right, and go and taking
Mhm.
the vitamin D, the vitamin Bs, the multivitamin that has just not just a over the counter multivitamin that you would get at Walgreens, but a functional
Right.
level multivitamin and magnesium and all those things. And those that takes time. So,
Right.
we're
Like I
still kind of
remember,
walking through
sorry, I just wanted to say I know like in the beginning I wasn't really taking the vitamins regularly. I actually hadn't really started until like a couple weeks ago. Um
that.
but it took a process to get them in, okay?
I
And
know.
I was also on vacation and we all know, when you're on vacation, you're not really thinking about taking your medication or your vitamins, but you should.
Yeah.
But even within the past couple of days, I have really felt a change. And you can feel it almost, I can almost feel it in my body where they all just come together.
Yeah.
And it's really nice. I remember in the beginning, I think it was also a thing of, you don't want your mom telling you what you want or what you need, especially when you turn into an adult. And I remember my mom being like, before the medication, here's the supplement, it will make everything better. And I was like, literally, shut up.
Yeah.
I need something stronger than a supplement.
Literally,
And
she
it
did
was
say
true
that
that I needed something
too.
stronger than a supplement, but I also needed the supplement go together. And I think it was something where I just needed somebody other than my mom to tell me
Yeah.
what I needed,
Yeah,
But yeah.
exactly. And that's why I think this conversation is so important. And I'm really hoping that there's one person out there that hears this that is suffering with mental health and
Hmm.
can just get the message that there is help and there is hope.
Yeah.
And it is the whole body thing. It's like you can't just have a healthy mind, you have to have a healthy body and gut and heart. And that's why I love the name of this podcast because, hello, your health is calling. Your health does, your body talks to you. It tells you when
Hmm.
things are not right. And literally, help is a phone call away, it's an email away. You can email support at hello, your health is calling. You can go watch more of these YouTubes on the Reinvented Life Network and just know that, you know, Grace is young. She has her whole life ahead of her. And that's what, in one way, I have regret for not identifying and seeing and understanding fully, but I did finally. And
Hmm.
she got help and she is on her way. She's going to New York for college. I can feel comfortable about her. I live in Arizona. She's going to be in New York. I can feel good about the fact that she has help and she's supplementing and building her body up. So
And
we have to
also,
wrap
if
it up.
you're, oh, sorry, I was
No,
just
go
gonna say
ahead.
one more thing.
Hmm.
Um, Also, if you are a parent that is watching, like how my mom said in the beginning, of her and my dad, not really knowing anything about mental health, and especially if you're in that older generation, even if you're in the younger generation as well, because we're all at different stages within knowing mental health. Um, you know, you need to do your research. And if you don't know anything about it, you need to advocate for your child. And if you don't know anything about anxiety, look it up. Read a
Hmm.
book.
Right.
There's so many different things that you can do to educate yourself. This is where I'm going to be very blunt. You
Yeah.
need to educate yourself, and you need to listen to your child. You need to listen if it's your
Hmm.
spouse. You need to listen to your spouse, listen to your grandkids. Mental health is a very real thing. It's just as important as physical health.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. And I really appreciate you being on. It's a journey our family has traveled, and it's a vulnerable position, but it's something that needs to be talked about. And it's something, and I feel like Grace's experience is just going to help others, just as my experience with my health, and I'm trying to help others with it. So thanks for watching. Again, support at Hello, Your Health is Calling if you want any more information. I'm sure that Grace even would speak to people if they want to. So if your health is calling, please answer, please listen, and we will see you next week. Thanks for watching.
Thank you for tuning in to another empowering episode of Hello, Your Health is Calling with Sue Kostyk. Remember, your health journey is ongoing, and we're here to support you every step of the way. If you have any questions, insights, or stories to share, don't hesitate to reach out. You can connect with us on social media or call in live at 888-994-4995 Studio A. Together, we're transforming lives and embracing holistic well-being. Until next time, prioritize your health and remember, your health is calling.